Hey, we are your hosts, Nick Smith.
And Kylie Jo Smith. And today's episode is called I Matter More
Than You. That's the subtitle.
I was like, then you isn't on here.
I know, but it's the like, I matter more
Than you.
Get the point. We're detangling the myth of supremacy.
Yes, we're going to unpack a lot today. We have a lot of different things that we want to get into this episode. And it's really a common feeling that we all experience. And
Yes.
we need to know why it's important to fight against supremacy and what you can do to be completely free from this.
Free at last, free at last.
Thank God Almighty. There's no L in that word. God Almighty.
God Almighty.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't even put the D. God Almighty.
Oh, I was like,
put the D.
in Almighty, there's no D.
We're going to also talk about how we've encountered supremacy, and it may be a little more surprising than you think.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's lay a little groundwork.
Okay.
When my mind hears supremacy, because of our culture and because of the history that we've just recently come through, it immediately immediately goes to white supremacy, right?
Because that's the term.
That's the term. It's white supremacy. But
yeah.
Having a supremacist mindset or having this idea of supremacy is cross contextual. It's not just white and black.
It's pluralistic.
Yeah, you can have a personal supremacy or a mindset that says that you matter more.
Yeah,
and it's rooted in this idea of supremacy, of being supreme.
When I hear the word supreme, I have a totally different thing that I think of.
Is it a burrito?
Yep.
Burrito supreme.
Taco supreme.
And how dare that taco think it's better than other tacos?
But if you put sour cream on it, it
then
automatically is
supreme. Unless you're allergic to sour cream, though.
Which I am. But
so then that's actually not supreme in your life.
To me.
For you.
But in general, yes, that taco is the best of all tacos.
I don't know. I think a street taco is supreme to a taco supreme.
Oh, see.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I would definitely. That's a hard one. That's a tough one for me.
When I used to do delivery, I actually knew someone named Supreme, and he was an immigrant, and I don't remember where he was from, but when he first told me his name was Supreme, and I was like,
sure it is.
I'm gonna call you average. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna call you Joe.
I'm calling you equality. That's what I'm calling you. So let's define supremacy.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay. Supremacy. I thought you were going to jump in there I could drink my coffee, but it's cool.
I can do it.
No. Here, I got this. Coffee can wait. Supremacy is the state or condition of being superior to all others in authority, power, or status.
Wow.
That's the British way of saying it.
Yes, in status, data, all the other things. So why does it matter? You might be wondering, like, what's the deal? Like, what's the reason for breaking down what this means? Well, honestly, when we started looking at this subject and this word even, we're words people. We got to look at the word. We're literally word people, but we're also... yeah.
But
it was a nice Christian joke.
I liked it. It was very clean.
Yeah. But if you look back at the beginning of creation, being powerful is meant to be part of our experience. Like when God created us originally, like in our original perfect form, unfallen, we were meant to have power over we were meant to exercise dominion. And he actually said, subdue the earth and be fruitful. So this implies that we're going to have authority over the earth. So this would have been all the animals and all of creation. He expected us. A lot of times we think like the garden meant that we were just going to live in this garden in nature and nothing was ever going to be created beyond that. But God actually intended us to fashion the earth to make it look pretty. He wanted us to make it look good. Yeah. Like it was part of his plan. And so as far as supremacy, we were meant to have that with God.
But the difference is, because I think when you put supremacy on it, it gives it a negative connotation. Yeah. Like we were supposed to have authority, we were supposed to have power, but we were supposed to be supreme and are supreme to creation. As in, I can't remember who said it, but some poet or someone way smarter than me said that mankind is the crown jewel of all creation. That after God created everything, He created mankind, and the hard part is we start to then fight for. In our fallen nature, we start to fight for supremacy among mankind. Yes. And it's like, no, God created man and woman, Adam and Eve created humanity to be equal, to be co-heirs, to be vice regents. I heard in the Bible Project, they use that wording, vice regents.
Yes.
Like we're supposed to work together and cooperate, and there should be equality among the people.
Kings and queens ruling forever.
That's right.
That was the vision that God had. And we miss that because we focus so much on, the fall a lot, or we focus on like, we really want to know what did it mean when God created the animals? How did we focus on these things that when Moses was teaching the people about creation, he wasn't focusing on all of those things. He was pointing back to the supremacy of God.
That's right. Primarily.
That this God that created everything is the same God who just saved you through the Red Sea. But he was also focusing on who we were supposed to be, who God had intended his people to be. And this was authority. This was power. This was beautiful in its perfect form. But it was, as we all know, it was fractured when then we were given this false sense of authority.
Yeah. And that image, that imago Dei that we've all been given, right? That we're all made in the image of God. It gives us dignity. Yes. And it gives us this sense of having some God-likeness that separates us from the rest of creation. We were meant to rule. And I like the word authority. And even when you said subdue the earth, right? That wording doesn't mean enslave as in abuse.
Right.
It's meant in the kind of nuances of like good stewardship. We're supposed to subdue, we're supposed to create and craft and shape all in a way that is good. That brings life.
Yeah, that continues to bring a return. Because when you think about a garden, you don't just plant seeds one time. Usually you have to continue tending it. Okay, I got to make sure I get the weeds out of here. And there's an understanding of a continual process to bring about fruit season after season after season. And God intended that. That was not just something that came after the fall. Now we have to grow food. Now we have to. Before
it would just grow on its own, but we would participate, right?
Yes.
And so we were meant to have this authority, but there was a twist in the fall where it turned from authority to supremacy.
Yeah.
Where we stopped seeing each other as seeing the other person as mattering co-equally, right? We start to rule and rule in dominion over each other.
Yeah.
And so before we get a little further into it, if you enjoy anything that you're hearing right now, if any of this is speaking to you and you're like, wow, that's crazy.
If you like the idea of, man, we were supposed to be ruling the
I
earth.
rule. If right now you're saying, I do matter more than others and I do rule, go ahead and share this because you're in for the rest of this.
You're committed now.
Yes, you're in. But go ahead and share this with somebody and let them know about this podcast because we'd really, really appreciate that.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, when we started to want to subdue things and have authority over things, over other people, rather. This was when it all kind of just went to heck.
And to heck in a hand card.
And really, you had pointed out, because I went back to the serpent and Eve, because that's generally where we see, she messed up.
Satan's first trick right there, yeah.
But we forget that Adam was a part of this. Adam was just as much a part of it. And honestly, a lot of times when it's referenced in Scripture, we see Adam, Jesus became the new Adam. There's a need for redeeming his brokenness as well. So, but Adam and Eve, you pointed out, when God found them, when he had to go and look for them because they were hiding from him, right? You can't have
So here, let's just tell the story. So anybody doesn't know the story. So serpent came in, tricked Eve, said, hey, eat this apple or whatever kind of fruit it was. Eat this fruit.
Could have been passion fruit. You don't know.
It could have been pomegranate. It would have been hard to just bite into it, but we don't know what it was like back then. Yeah. Anyway, he says, eat this thing. And God told him not to eat the thing. She eats the thing anyway. All of a sudden, she gives it to her husband, and they know about good and evil. And then they
know they're naked.
They know they're naked, and they're ashamed at this point. And they hear God coming, and they go and hide.
Yes.
And so then when God pops up, and he's like,
hey, guys.
It's like a sitcom. As soon as the conflict happens and someone knocks at the door,
it's
that's exactly.
How's it going?
This was the first setup, first premise. But no, but it wasn't funny. It was pretty broken.
Yeah.
So God pops up and he asks, where are you? Which is actually really cool in the Hebrew. He's not saying where are you as he doesn't know where he is.
Right.
He's saying where are you it's more of a how are you? Where's your heart? What's going on?
Isn't it also relational? Where are you in relation to me or something?
Yeah,
it's a relational distance.
It's where/how
how is it with you?
Basically,
how goes it?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What is you doing, baby? And so Adam immediately, though, this feeling of supremacy, this feeling of I matter more, kicks in. Because what is the first thing he does is
she did it.
We hid because we were afraid. But look, it was her.
Yeah, the woman you made for me.
The woman you made. He threw her under the bus quick.
He threw God under the bus too. The woman you gave me.
Listen, this is really, if you're going to be mad at anyone, God,
I kind of feel like you started this.
I think you should take some responsibility.
I'm trying to point fingers, but you're like you, God, the whole time. It was you.
And
anyway.
Yeah, so he immediately goes into this state of my safety, my feelings matters more.
Yeah.
He doesn't step in and try to protect his wife. He didn't step in and try to protect his wife from the serpent.
Yeah.
He doesn't step in to try to lead and share in any of the blame. He just immediately is like, I matter more, so I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
And then we see that continue with Cain and Abel, right?
Yes, Cain and Abel, which we all know is the story. Cain and Abel were Adam and Eve's sons. So after they were expelled from the garden, they have Cain first, who was a man of crops, like he worked the earth, and Abel tended the sheep and the livestock. And so they bring an offering. They each bring an offering. And we understand from the context and from the language, if you study it, that Abel's offering was a first fruits kind of offering. He brought the best. We understand Cain brought, what was it? What's the wording? He brought some.
Some of his crops.
Yeah. So even in that, we understand, okay, your heart's not in this completely, Cain. But he brings it, and God has favor on Abel's offering, whereas he does not on Cain's. And so then Cain becomes jealous of his brother because of this. Now, ultimately, we know Cain had some responsibility in that. If he would have given the first and the best, maybe he wouldn't have had that feeling. But he decides to take this jealousy to the next level of supremacy and say, my life matters more than Abel's.
My feelings matter more.
And my entitlement to having my offering looked on with favor matters more. So he then goes and murders his brother while he's out in the field.
And you know what just hit me? And we're going to see it in the next one, which is Abram and Sarai. Abram and Sarai, they go to Egypt. God didn't tell them to go. But they go to Egypt anyway to avoid the famine. Yeah. And Sarai is fine. And Abram is like,
she looked good.
Abram's like, I don't want nobody to kill me and take my wife. So say you're my sister.
So basically telling his wife to lie.
But not only that, in saying, hey, say you're my sister, that means any man that comes to try to take you can marry you and do whatever they want with you because I matter more than you do. Right. If you die or get beat or raped, whatever, as long as they don't kill me, I'm cool. Yeah. What I'm seeing throughout all of this that's running through supremacy is this understanding that my feelings have to be justified more than being right. So like being right with God or doing the right thing. But being righteous isn't as important when I'm operating in this feeling of supremacy than justifying my position. Wow. Because where I stand and who I am has to be right because I clearly I'm better than everyone else. Wow. I know my intentions and I did it for the right reason. And so instead of humbling myself like Cain, instead of humbling himself and saying, oh man, maybe I'm wrong here and maybe I need to get myself together.
Maybe God's right. Maybe sin is crouching at my door.
Yeah. He's like, no, I did what was supposed to. You guys are wrong. I'm right. And my feelings matter more. And what matters more than being correct is that my feelings are justified. And so I'm going to go ahead and kill you, knock you out, hit you with this rock. Yeah. And then I win, right? Yeah. Wow. And this continues in our behavior. Like this is so common in humanity. This isn't just an American racial inequality thing.
No. And it's not just people back then. It's not just, oh, well, that was the beginning of the world. That was like
a pre-enlightenment.
The first people. And so like they didn't know. They weren't smart enough to realize, no, actually, it's not a matter of intelligence. Yeah. It's a matter of humanity. It's a matter of what is the human condition. And at this point, and what we honestly, I think the fact that it existed back then in these people points even more to the reality of it existing now because we come from this. This is the seed from which we have been born.
Him the roots.
Right. And so when we look at this, and one word that comes to mind with even the like Abram and Sarai is survival.
Oh yeah.
Like for some reason, we take these situations that we find ourselves in as an attack on our ability to survive.
Oh yeah.
In a situation. And so like, it's not just, oh, well, I need to make sure that I matter more. It's not just Abram looking at the situation and saying, I matter more, so I'm going to throw her under the bus. It's like, no, I don't want to die. Yeah. I don't want these people to try and kill me for you. And so I'll just give you willingly. Yeah. And putting Sarai then in that position of being under him, not not God's plan, not God's perfect will for marriage at that point. And so it's like we're trying to survive. We're trying to make these, and we see so many things. I know for me, become survival problems, or like in our minds and in our brains, the way we process is like we see things as threats that really aren't.
Yeah.
So then we begin to treat those things as threats on our life.
That's
and
good.
that causes us to justify killing someone, or to justify slandering someone, or to justify treating someone poorly because, well, it's a threat on my humanity. And it's like, no, it's a threat on your pride.
Well, and if you take it from a actual life and death, it's a threat on my lifestyle. It's a threat on my comfort of living. It's a threat on my ability to operate in the way I want to operate.
Which may not be righteous. But
exactly, but you're still threatening that. And so maybe instead of killing you, I will kill your image in front of other people.
Come on.
That's what slander is. Is degrading the image of somebody.
Yes.
Without them being aware of it or even able to defend themselves. And so a lot of times that's how this is lived out in the everyday. Is like my feelings matter more, so I'm going to slay their image in front of me. I'm going to continue to subjugate others underneath me, which is why it still is. But when Jesus came on the scene with the gospel, when Jesus came on the scene and started preaching to people that a greater man has no one than to lay down his life for his brother, or who wants to be greatest of all has to be servant of all.
That's in Luke. Yeah.
Jesus was bringing this paradigm of humility. And he was bringing, it was really revolutionary for that time because you're dealing with Greek and Roman culture, and
which was supreme.
Yeah, the Pax Romana, like we're going to kill everybody and take the good stuff and make it our own, and even the philosophy of that day, humility was seen as weakness. Yeah, being humble was seen as a character flaw, as a defect. And Jesus actually came around and was like, no, humility is how you operate if you follow Jesus, if you follow me, if you follow God, the only true creator of heaven and earth. If you want to be children of God, you have to operate in humility.
Yeah. And that, even using that term, operate, like humility for the Christian is never just a matter of what we think or what our opinion is.
That's good.
It has to do with action. Otherwise, it's not faith. Like this is why we have a practical faith. Yeah. And so Jesus was, when he even said in Luke, when he's talking about like he who wants to be the greatest must be a servant of all. He doesn't say he wants to be the greatest must think himself lesser than others. And that's it.
Come on now.
He says he who wants to be the greatest must be a servant. So therefore you must want to serve. And this is hard for me. I know this is something I struggle with because I'm like, I don't want to serve those who I know are not better than me.
Huh. Come on.
I mean,
tell the truth, shame the devil.
I'm just going to tell it. Who I know, like, come on now. They're not more talented than me. They're not more, like, I don't want to serve these people because, like, come on. That's beneath me, Lord, right? And I know I'm not alone in that. I know I'm not.
No, it's just
you may be saying like, oh, wow,
Nope, it's just you. I wish I got crickets, but I'm not going to play them.
But in truth, it's hard to want to practically and actively go out of our way to serve those that we might otherwise want to put ourselves in authority over.
Yes.
And this happens in the church all the time. And it happens on the basis not just of race, but age, gender. Yep. Gender is one of the ones in the church that we struggle so much with that we have made exceptions for it because, oh, well, that's a woman.
The man's supposed to be the head. And now we're not talking about good, healthy
balance.
No, what's the not egalitarianism? Okay. What's the other? I'm just
complementarianism.
Because there's a healthy complementarianism. Right.
Yes,
there's a healthy way to understand. Yeah, we have different roles
that are equal.
Yet no one's more important than the other. Right. Kylie Jo and I find ourselves more in the egalitarian camp, so we're very much of the mindset of like we are co-heirs, we are co-equal. But we're not speaking against complementarians. No. I just wanted to clarify. But in churches, that toxic idea of supremacy, of either you're better because you're on the board, because you're a deacon, you're an elder,
because you've been here 20 years,
because you're a pastor, all of a sudden you're better than somebody.
Which we know.
We know.
If you've been looking at the news, you know. The office of pastor is not exempt from falling.
Not impeccable. Not impeccable. And so we've actually experienced this mindset of I matter more than you in church culture. Yeah. So we do ministry. I don't know if you guys know that. And in a church. In the process
in churches.
In the process of doing ministry, you run into people who don't want to listen or don't want to humble themselves to learn from anyone, especially people that are younger than them, or especially people that look differently than them.
Yeah.
And we had a conflict with someone in a church, and everything that they did, this was a saint who had been in the church, probably born in the pew, and they're at this point in their 60s. And everything that this person did reeked of supremacy. Mm-hmm. It was the whole mode of operating is that I matter more than you.
Yeah.
And so everything that was being done had this like, well, your feelings don't matter.
Yeah. And all the way, and truthfully, it escalated, not just from like in the realm of the ministry, not just in like, well, my opinion matters more or what I want to do matters more. It started there, and then it elevated to when it became an issue of needing repentance and needing to be addressed now as church discipline. It just like skyrocketed to this level of diminishing someone else's dignity.
Yes.
It was no longer just I matter more, but now I'm going to prove that I matter more by doing and saying these things in such a way that does cause harm.
And here's some of the telltale signs.
Oh,
Nick
has just a side note. Nick has trouble saying, you don't have trouble, it's not like a speech impediment, but it's the California
it
creeps
just
out.
Rolls out. Yeah.
So like the word sell and
sale. I say them the same. I say them the same.
It's
I don't
adorable
flip
to
them.
me.
I just say them
He'll
all
be
the
like,
same.
that's on sell. And I'm like, no, it's not.
So like telltale. Like I know. Telltale. But I just say telltale. Anyway. So
you're going to telltale on yourself.
The telltale sign of supremacy, it creeps into our language.
Yeah.
And I remember some of the things that this person said were things like, how dare you? How dare you?
We need to do an episode on that.
We will.
Alone.
But how dare you? Like,
how dare you?
First off, I was not raised in rural suburban America. And so when someone says something like, how dare you, it makes me laugh every time.
And he did.
Because I'm looking for cameras. Like, are we on a TV show? How dare you?
What's my line? Give me my line. I need my line for this one.
Quick, while it's fresh. Give me my line. But how dare you speaks to the mindset of, you're not at a level
to speak to me or do that.
Exactly. You don't have the right.
Yeah.
There's nothing in your being that grants you the authority to speak to me.
Pardon me, Your Majesty.
I didn't know it was the Queen's turn.
And even like to dare, like, and I'm going to use an illustration of like when you would approach the royal throne in history.
Back when I used to do that.
Back when, Nick would do that.
Roll up on him.
When a person wanted to approach the king, you had to ask permission to even go into the throne room, because even going there without an invitation, without permission, was seen as an affront to the king. It was like a challenge.
It was a threat.
You could be killed on spot.
I mean, even now, you can't just roll into the president's office.
Exactly. So like this idea of how dare you speaks to, you're threatening my throne. You are stepping into the throne room of my dominion, and I do not give permission. Yeah. When it's like, who are you?
Yeah.
That's another one. Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are is another thing that creeps into the language. If you use these words,
you might be a supremacist.
You have a me first attitude. You've got a I matter more attitude. There's also what was the other thing? What was the other thing? Oh, you ought to be.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that one.
When addressed with, hey, you caused pain in someone else's life.
And this person is hurt now. Well, they ought to be.
They ought to be hurt. Because the underlying comment is because they don't matter as much as I do.
Yeah.
That I don't care if they're hurt.
I pronounce them as deserving this pain.
Yeah, they're lower than me. And so it doesn't matter. Their opinion weighs less. Their insight is less than mine. I matter more.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy how this slips into the church under the guise of holiness, but it's not. Mm-hmm. So we kind of gave you some preemptive, how do you know if you're suffering with supremacy? Mm-hmm. But what are some other ways, Kylie Jo, that they can,
so
our folks can understand?
One of the ones that, if you're like me, you may struggle with comparison. And this is one way that I know if I'm slipping into a supremacist mindset, like I'm comparing myself to other people. And usually it manifests in viewing someone else's accomplishment or whatever they have as like, oh man, that's so much better than what I have. Mm-hmm. So then this is crazy how the enemy does this. So then with this one person, I'm like, oh man, I'm less than them. But then I will find myself seeking out other ways to view myself as greater than by comparing to those who have less than.
Yeah.
It's twisted.
Yeah.
When I'm not even meant to be comparing myself to anyone at all. It doesn't matter if I'm thinking they're better or less than me. We are supposed to try and find the common ground with people. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to be trying to find those what we call inroads, those bridges to like, okay, we have this in common. I do believe that competition is healthy. Mm-hmm. And I am very competitive. Like, ask my husband. We can't play games. I'm just saying. Like, literally, we can't play board games.
Yeah.
Because I win a lot.
That's not the reason. But we'll go with that. We'll go with that today.
Competition is good because we should want greater things for ourselves and for others. So it's like, oh, yeah, this is why sports are so appealing. This is why we love to watch the Olympics. Competition's not bad. Mm-hmm. But when it becomes, now I'm valuing this person differently, or I'm comparing my value based on this person's accomplishments, that is comparison. That feeds into supremacy because it gives us this false sense of, now I have to overcompensate. Yeah. Now I have to go out and get and subdue this thing in order to build up my image or to build up my value.
I think one thing that I'm hearing in this, and you can tell me if I'm off, if I heard it wrong, but one thing I'm hearing is that it's not just comparison, because we all compare at times, but it's the way you compare. So like, if this just came to me, if somebody beats me in a game, I view their victory as not valid, because how could that person beat me?
That's it.
Because I'm better than them.
That's it.
So it's not just the comparison. It's this person won. Well, they only won because they cheated, or they only won because of this, but really it's not about the cheating or whatever you're saying. I think their success is not valid, because in my mind, I'm better than them.
Yeah.
And if you think of social media, oh my goodness, you see someone who's doing better, you know what I mean? Because social media is poison. Unless you're liking our page, then please do that. But
just don't compare.
Just don't compare. But when you see someone else who's doing something in the same vein as what you're doing, but they're gaining success, you're suffering from supremacy if you look at them and you start to diminish or delegitimize their success. Because they're less than me. I should have that.
Well, and which is also it also points to the fragility, which is a whole other subject. How fragile is my self-image and my self-worth that I can't even accept someone else's success without, they must not have gotten it legitimately because they couldn't have, because I have to be better.
Yeah, because they're not as good, which rolls into our next point, which is bitterness. If you see bitterness in your life, you're suffering from supremacy.
What does bitterness look like, though?
Bitterness, mostly like this.
Only after you eat the lemon.
Only after you eat the lemon. But no, bitterness is when you feel entitled to something that you don't get, and you start to get angry, and you start to get hard-hearted, you start to get cold, you start to get cynical, overly critical of other people based on their status, their accomplishments, their life. It's the opposite of being grateful. It's the opposite of encouraging others. Bitterness takes root in different forms, but it's a heart condition that says, I should have more than I do.
Yeah.
I should be more than I am.
Yeah. I think it's also unrequited disappointment and anger. Like if we don't allow ourselves, here's the thing, God has big shoulders.
Big old shoulders.
He can handle your disappointment. He can handle your anger. And he'll even tell you if your anger is unrighteous. But if we don't trust God with those emotions, with the God, I really wanted this. And sometimes for me, I will delay going to the Lord with something because I know the way I feel about it is wrong. I'm like, oh God, I'm really angry about that. Well, I know you're going to tell me that I shouldn't be angry about that, so I'm not going to tell you about it because you're just going to tell me what I should be.
Because he doesn't know.
Because he's not in there with me processing this at all. But like we'll put that off so much sometimes that I know I've had times in my life where I've become bitter because I didn't take that anger and actually process it. I didn't take that unrequited feeling and requite it. Must requite the unrequitedness.
Just requite the feelings. It's pretty self-explanatory.
I hope I'm using that word right.
I don't know, but we're gonna coin it right now. I think oh wait, this is yours. You got the next one.
Oh yes. Well, it goes in with bitterness as well. You talked about not really being feeling or having a hard heart towards others. This causes a lack of compassion.
Yeah.
So then when people come to us and maybe say something like, man, I'm really suffering because I feel this person did this to me, or even someone approaching you and saying, hey, you know what? When you said this word or you said this thing, that really just hurt me. You instantly dismiss their feeling because of your defensiveness about your actions, because you matter more. And so what you say should have value in their life, and they should never question you.
That's right.
So this is a feeling of supremacy that has led you to now dismiss someone else. And it's not just about feelings. We dismiss people's experiences. I've seen it and experienced it so many times that I will say, you know what, this person did this and said this, and this was abusive. And someone will twist it and say, well, you know, the only reason they did that is, and trying to justify something that was very clearly sin and caused damage. And I'm telling you, Christian, this happens so often in the brother and sisterhood of the church. Yeah. It's damaging.
And this is where I want to go back to what I'm sure some people would have expected us to talk about, which is cultural or systemic supremacy. Because in this lack of compassion, in this bitterness, in this comparison, you see this if you're operating in any of these based on any group you belong to, then you're operating in that supremacy. Yeah. So if you dismiss a women's testimony, if you're a man and you dismiss a woman's experiences or their testimony or their achievements or accomplishments because they're a woman, then you're dealing with male supremacy. Yeah. Vice versa. If you're a woman, same thing. If you're white and you dismiss the experiences of your black brothers and sisters or your brown brothers and sisters because they're illegitimate and because, well, clearly all people that look like that you're dealing with white supremacy.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. If you're black, it's the same thing. And so this is very personal. You have to understand, like, am I dealing with this in my heart? But you also have to know this could be rooted in your identity being placed in some larger group that you think that group is better than some other group. Yeah. And so you have to understand that all of these things have a personal, individualistic element to them. Yeah. But they also could be rooted in your understanding of your identity as it pertains to your membership of some larger group.
Yeah. And also, like, in wrestling with this topic, specifically with like white supremacy or male chauvinism and different things like that, we look at these as, like you said, systemic issues. And these are issues that we see in different institutions in our culture. And we want to combat those issues. We want to fight against systemic issues for sure. We need legislation in place. We need people that are going to pioneer and fight for that. But for the Christian, we understand, and Jesus teaches over and over and over again, personal responsibility.
That's right.
And we can only work so far as we can work. Like my relationship with you, like I have to invest in this. I can't say, well, everyone who's married needs to be faithful and listen to their spouse. And they
all
need to,
husbands and all wives.
They need to submit to each other. I can't say that and truly expect change if I do not model that in my relationship with my husband. And so when we look at supremacy in the different factions that we see in our lives, we have to first acknowledge, like, because every person does it, I struggle with supremacy in this area. Yeah. And then, like you said, if it's attached to an identity that you have misplaced, that's a whole other issue of repentance. That has nothing to do with the institution of that supremacy. It has to do with, oh man, I considered myself such a puffed up Steelers fan that I was so ready to dismiss anybody who liked any other team. And I should, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great example.
Nothing against the Steelers. That's fine.
Or nothing for the Steelers either.
I mean, just depends. Whatever. How dare you?
I'm just kidding. So let's go into some practicality. Yes. This is how can you personally, now that you've identified these areas of your life where you feel like you may be suffering, if God's been leaning on you a little bit in these areas, this may lead you to take further steps. So practical tip number 1, how to free yourself from this feeling of supremacy is to pick up your cross.
Well, wait, no, you skipped number 1. The first one is you can't free yourself.
Oh, sorry.
You just would be skipping it.
My bad.
I apologize. Didn't even matter to you.
I'm sorry. My feelings matter more. No, sorry, go ahead.
The first one is you can't free yourself. Like we are powerless to be able to free ourselves from feeling better than others because it's such a constantly, we're constantly tempted, and in our own strength, we're not able to fight against this. This is the first step.
Is admitting you got a problem.
First step, admit you got a problem and you can't fix it yourself.
There we go. Okay, now the one that I said. Sorry, I jumped the gun. Pick up your cross. And Kylie Jo called me out. She's like, that's such a Christian-y saying. People don't know what that means.
Well,
pick up your, like, literally? Okay, I got it.
Yeah, I was like, now Nick, what? You wear a cross every day. Is that what you mean? You want people to go out and buy cross necklaces?
Yes. And we're selling them. No, I'm just kidding. We're not selling them. Although that would be quite a marketing ploy. Pick up your cross. Your Nick Smith podcast. Anyway. So pick up your cross, meaning deny yourself, die to self. look at how you live your life and the desires that you have and compare them to what Christ calls you to. So to do that, you have to know what Christ calls you to. You have to be in your word. You've got to have a relationship with Jesus. But taking up your cross means living the sacrificial life that Jesus Christ himself lived while he was here on earth, and doing the things that serve, that bless others, that say, I am second to God's sovereignty, to God's design
Supremacy.
for my life, that God is supreme, that I am not. And so you have to take up your cross in that moment and say, okay, I may think that I deserve, I may think that this person is blank, I may think that these people do this, but I first have to come to the cross and say, okay, God, you're number one. What do you want for my life?
Rule number one,
God's number one.
All right, well, this is a tip. This isn't steps. This is just tip number 2. Know your God-given worth. Part of the problem that we'll have is that we want to prove that we're worth something or prove we have more worth than others. But in reality, you've been given worth in God. He's given you value. He has created you for something incredible as part of his ultimate plan. And so if you know that, it will help to stave off some of these feelings of having to prove your worth. And we had a great episode, a conversation with Is316. You have got to go listen to it. He talks all about knowing your worth and his insight. I made fun of it. I wasn't making fun of him, but I was like, man, you're like Jesus taking it to a different level of like, you've heard it said, self-worth, build up your self-worth. But he lays out such I believe, a really simple kingdom understanding of knowing your worth.
Yeah, so check that episode out. It's really good. Practical tip number 3, make peace with your imperfections. And we're gonna dive into that deeper with our inner circle. So if you want to know more about that, you need to join our inner circle.
Yes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you can go to patreon.com/Nick Smith Podcast to join our inner circle.
Yes. And actually, something we just learned that we are able to offer to you through Patreon is annual membership. So maybe you're in a place where you're like, I cannot commit to this much money per month. I don't know what my situation is going to be in 6 months, but you have an amount of money that you would like to give for a year. Like you're like, I can commit to pledging this much money towards this ministry for a year. We would love to still have you. You will still get all the benefits for Patreon and all of that. But if that's where you're at and you want to give as an annual membership, we would love to have you do that as well.
Right.
Please don't feel like you have to be tied into each month. So we're going to offer that to you. If you go to patreon.com/Nick Smith Podcast, you can find out the information there.
There it is.
Yes. Well, this has been the Nick Smith Podcast. We hope you've gotten a dose of real life.
No myth. Be blessed.